Hi, good evening.
Hi.
One of my favorite verses is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. And as I mentioned, I'm Jerry Valenzuela, a believer in Jesus Christ. I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. Today, thanks to him and working the CR program, I received my 10-year chip. My brothers and I were raised Catholic Christian. Thanks be to God, we had a wonderful childhood. Thanks to our parents, our childhood was filled with lots of love. It was a childhood that had an emphasis on knowing Christ, knowing and loving Christ, family, education, Little League baseball, playing with the kids in the neighborhood. The kids in our neighborhood called ourselves the J Avenue Street Gang. And we were armed with kickballs, footballs, baseballs, gloves, and bats, and 50 cents in our pockets to spend at the local Circle K. My brothers and I were blessed with wonderful parents, an incredible upbringing, and an ideal childhood. Excuse me. When I was in my younger teenage years, I never dreamed I would wind up doing some of the things that I did in my older teenage years, but toward the latter part of high school, I started to casually drink and smoke marijuana. Though my brothers and I had earned full-ride academic scholarships to the U of A, by the end of my first year in college, I had lost a substantial portion of my scholarships as a direct result of drinking, partying, getting high, and neglecting my studies. Within 5 years in college, my drinking and drugging had escalated to a level in which I was occasionally doing harder drugs, specifically snorting and smoking cocaine and crystal meth. At this point, I had accrued some actual physical scars to show for my drinking and partying. For example, one time, while out with the boys, I fell flat on my face and cut my mouth open after drinking like 10 chugs of a bottle of gin. Threw up in my brother's Camaro, and then just wound up over in the hospital for a couple of hours. On several other occasions, I was punched and beaten up because of the people I was hanging around and doing drugs and partying. One time, I was left on the street bleeding, unconscious because 3 guys hit me in the head with a bottle, beat me up, and stole my leather jacket. In 1992, I had a brand new son. Dylan was quitting college and was selling contractor supplies nationwide over the phone in a rock and roll atmosphere. My son Dylan, by the way, has been an enormous blessing from God. Also in 1992, I got busted with a buddy with 9 hits of acid, LSD, a quarter bag of pot on our way to the Salt River to go tubing. It was miraculous that I didn't get a DUI because we were drinking all the way there. Technically, the 9 hits of acid made it a felony, but the judge wound up giving me a misdemeanor and 1 year of diversion program because it was a first offense. While in this diversion program, I wound up doing lines of cocaine with the pharmacy tech that would witness me peeing into the cup every week. I would, nuts. I would pee into the cup, and then he and I would go into the other room and do he'd lift up a box, and we'd do a huge line of cocaine after I peed in the cup. In this period of time, I couldn't risk smoking pot because I was drug tested every week, and it stays in your system that long. But I did do crystal meth virtually every weekend throughout my entire diversion program. Isn't that crazy? A couple of times the diversion program rep questioned me because the meth was showing up on my drug test, but I told him that I had taken Sudafed for a cold. In 1994, I moved out of my parents' home for the first time into the Menlo townhomes in Barrio Hollywood. And my drinking and drugging went completely to the next level. Now I started drinking and smoking pot and cigarettes every day. I also continued snorting and smoking crystal meth and crack cocaine fairly frequently. Though I never lost complete contact and communication with God, I was choosing to live a life of working to party, drink, smoke pot, and snort and smoke crystal meth and crack every chance that I could. It didn't overly concern me who was hurt or suffered as a result of my ill choices. My parents suffered a lot through the many years of my drinking and drugging. One time I found myself in some gangster's crack house surrounded by 6 or 7 black dudes. One of them had a gun right here in his pants, and I thought I was going to die. He said that I owed him money. I had been there a few days previous, and quite frankly, my mind was so blown that maybe I did leave there owing them some money. They were so high on crack from days of using that they looked like angry demons ready to kill me. The main leader dude hauled off and punched me in the cheek and knocked me out temporarily for a few seconds. And when I woke up, I was actually in so much fear that they were going to shoot me that I had a tear trickle down my cheek. And I was imagining the police showing up at my parents' house to tell them what had occurred and that I was dead. What a way that would have been to have left this earth. Amazingly enough, they started one by one having a confused look in their eye and looking up and around and leaving the premises. One by one, they started leaving. And finally, the last one left, and I took off to the nearest gas station and called the cops. They got my car back, and I went over to my buddy's house to chill out for a week, medicating myself with pot and alcohol. Over the following years, I had various episodes of getting vehicles taken, getting punched, and similar disasters that all occurred as a result of drinking and drugging, partying, and placing myself in the company of people that I had no business being around. In February of 1998, after going through a vigorous year a year and a half entry process, I proudly started at the Border Patrol Academy at 30 years old. It was a tough 19 and a half week program with a promising career working for the federal government. In May of that year, when I was 2 weeks away from graduating, I was kicked out for an incident that occurred in the 9th week of the program. What had occurred was I had borrowed my buddy's rent-a-car to go out trying to score some cocaine or crack at the Border Patrol Academy. And got the car robbed, and there was a car chase, and all hell broke loose. As a result of this incident, I was kicked out in week 17 of the academy after I had passed the final, most difficult immigration law exam, and was at the point, at that point, I was pretty much a shoo-in to graduate, and I got kicked out. They flew me to Phoenix, and I stayed there, blowing my last $1,500 on Van Buren, drinking and smoking crack cocaine. In 2001, I received my first DUI the night before I started a brand new job. Truly, it was miraculous that I hadn't received one before because I drank and drove quite frequently. I got the DUI because I was driving in the Oracle and Grant area trying to score crack cocaine after bar hopping to 3 different bars and being so drunk that I had thrown up on myself, not to mention had smoked a lot of pot. I had asked some dude on the street, "Do you got any stuff?" And apparently he told a police officer that was roaming by, and when they pulled me over, I got a DUI and lost my driver's license for a year and a half because I had refused to blow. That put an end to my drinking and driving, but it didn't put an end to my drinking. I would just call my dad and brother to go for rides or call a taxi cab. I continued drinking and drugging for another 40 years, and in 2005, my alcohol and drug use peaked out, and I was drinking a 12-pack a night, smoking an ounce of weed a month, smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, and on top of these other things, I went through approximately $10,000 of crack cocaine that year. And I remember going to my knees and praying to God that I can't do this anymore, that I'm dying, and for him to please not let me go to hell. On January 3rd, 2006, I first set foot into Celebrate Recovery at Casas. I was physically, spiritually, and emotionally in dire need of healing. Not to mention, I had really damaged my finances and credit rating. I was very ashamed and didn't want anyone to see me, but they welcomed me, and I really started loving attending every week, every Tuesday night. Upon beginning CR, God delivered me from drinking, and with the drinking gone, the crack cocaine and meth went as I figured it would. See, I needed to be really drunk to rationalize going out and doing the harder drugs. But I continued smoking pot. After several months of going to Casa CR, my friends and the leaders at that CR asked me to lead the worship time. That was an enormous blessing. I would practice the 4 songs I was going to sing a couple hours before CR every Tuesday night. And I really looked forward to CR every Tuesday night. It was like a booster shot for continued sobriety every week. I knew that God knew that I loved Him, and the sobriety from the alcohol and harder drugs was a huge victory, but I just couldn't seem to stop smoking pot and cigarettes daily. I prayed to God that I'm sorry, but I just can't seem to make this be the last bag of pot. But that in my heart, I truly wanted to be sober from all drugs and stop smoking cigarettes too. In late August of 2007, while passing by the TV, I saw Pastor Steve Muncie on the TBN channel, and he was talking about the Day of Atonement, and that on that day, God gave a number of extra blessings to those who would make an appointment with the Lord and bring a sacrifice. I emailed my brothers and asked them if they knew anything about this. One of my brothers told me it's a Jewish holiday called Yom Kippur. I prayed to the Lord, set up an appointment with Him for September 22nd, 2007, at 1:00 p.m. on Mount Lemon. And 1 week before this, I was visiting some friends' house in Gilbert, and I told them that they're a couple, and I told them what I was going to do. My buddy's wife told me trying to quit both pot and cigarettes at the same time is probably setting yourself up for failure and disappointment. I thought, she does have a good point, but then I felt God put it on my heart that He is the God of the impossible.
Amen.
The Friday night before the Day of the Atonement appointment on September 22nd, 2007, I remember going to God and saying, can we push this appointment out a little bit? Maybe a month or two. And I remember Him profoundly and firmly putting it on my heart, the way that He speaks to us, no. You made the appointment and now you're going to keep it. At that point, I proceeded, and the night before that next day, I proceeded to profusely smoke cigarettes and pot. I was just sitting there just sucking it down. It was my last day. Then I thought, what would I take for a sacrifice? I wound up throwing my last $25 bag of pot down the toilet that day that I went up for that appointment. That was my sacrifice. On that day, September 22nd, 2007, I remember it very clearly. At 8 a.m., I had a couple of eggs with toast. At 9 a.m., I felt God put it on my heart to fast. So at 9 a.m., I started a 24-hour fast. It turns out that fasting for 24 hours is a part of the Day of Atonement. Funny coincidence. I proceeded to drive up to Mount Lemon. I felt as if I was swimming in God's glory. As I drove up to Mount Lemon, a huge set of clouds seemed to simultaneously be coming from the Rincon Mountains to my same destination. After I arrived around 12:45, I found my perfect old camping spot, and it seemed as if God had prepared it for He and I to spend this special time together. It had wood ready and ready-made campfire. I had my guitar, a lawn chair, and my Bible. It was an incredible, extra blessed, special day. One of the things I came to find out about God on this Day of Atonement appointment with the Lord is that God is very punctual. He didn't arrive at 12:59 p.m. or He didn't arrive at 1:01 p.m. As the Lord is my witness, I tell you, right at 1 p.m., I started singing a song to Him that I wrote called Jesus Christ. And exactly at that time, that range of clouds that I had mentioned earlier came powerfully over the mountain. Over the mountain range on Mount Lemon. And right at that moment, what I felt, if you can imagine, was God's power and peace all at the same time. I felt that my soul was naked and vulnerable before God's presence. I felt in that moment that many demons could approach me and came at me, but I felt like God blockaded them. And God reached into my heart and pulled out the addictions and purified me. Previous to going there, I believed that God was going to take away 70 to 80% of my desire to smoke pot and cigarettes daily. He took away 97 or 98% of it.
Amen.
He left me with like 1 or 2%. And as a result of this, that is my sobriety recovery birthday, September 22nd, 2007. Thanks be to the Lord. I promised to God that every year on the Day of Atonement, no matter what was going on, as long as I'm physically able to do it, I will go to that appointment with the Lord on Mount Lemmon on every Day of Atonement of every year. And ever since I met my wife here, she has gone with me every year to my Day of Atonement appointment with the Lord. And that's actually next Saturday is that day. So. Over the next 7 years, God, little by little, helped me to improve all aspects of my life, my health, losing 50 pounds, my finances, my relationships with my family and friends became better than ever before. Not to mention discernment in choosing my friends. God helped me to reestablish good new credit. Now, a decade later, I see that what has worked the best for me is trying my best daily to live intentionally for Jesus Christ. Amen. A simple prayer that I heard Joyce Meyer say, and I pray it, is God, before I make a plan for today, I go to you and pray, what's your plan for my life for today? Let's do your plan. On October 2014, I suddenly came down with a condition called oromandibular dystonia. That wasn't actually diagnosed until January of 2015. This is a video of it before. He's gonna pull up a video of what this does.
11:15, and we're doing a oromandibular dystonia check. And we got a brand new song idea. Remember the song, My Sharona? My Sharona. I thought, my dystonia. My dystonia. When you coffin and you sound of a band therefore. Anyway, it's a song idea. Peace out.
Thanks be to the Lord. This is the after result. Thanks be to God for modern medicine.
Friends, this is Jerry B, and you saw the other YouTube video where my oromandibular dystonia was pretty bad. Thanks be to the Lord for modern medicine. These Botox shots, I got one here, and one here, and they've done quite well for me. Thanks be to God. God bless. Peace.
But and amidst thousands of dollars in medical bills and no medical insurance at the time, God helped me through this to pay the bills without a single ding or a dent to my newfound good credit rating. Yes. Right at that time that I received that diagnosis from my doctor, I became overwhelmed with the temptation to go get qualified for medical marijuana. It was an overwhelming amount of temptation. I went as far as calling the marijuana certification number, and they told me to go get paperwork from the neurologist saying what I had and take it to them and pay them $130 and see their doctor. And I actually went as far as going to the neurologist specifically to get the paperwork to take it to the marijuana certification center. After getting the paperwork from the neurologist, as I approached my car in the parking lot, I suddenly stopped short of my car and bowed my head and looked up at God. And I said, God, look at what I'm doing. If you don't help me, I'm going to do this. And for me, that would have been a disaster, because it wouldn't have stopped with marijuana. I would have said, well, I already fell off the wagon, so I might as well drink too. And once I started drinking, it'd be a slippery slope before I got over to smoking crack and crystal, and I'd be back into that hellhole. And right in that moment, God put it on my heart, don't worry about it. He put it on my heart, don't worry about it. That was January of 2015. September of 2015, I was going to receive my 8-year chip. And God put it on my heart, don't worry about it. When you get your 8-year chip, in September, not if you get it, when you get it. Because you're going to get it, because I'm going to carry you. When you get your 8-year chip, I'm going to bless you bigger than you can ever imagine. Then I threw my paperwork in the back of that seat, in the back seat of the car, and went about my business, forgetting about going to get medical marijuana. And right at the time of my 8-year chip, guess what happened? I met my wife. I'm not gonna cry. You know what movie that's from? Jerry Maguire. When I figured it out and I pieced it together, that's what God was talking about back when I was in that moment of temptation. And I came to figure it out. I'm a little slow. I went to God, and I was just before it could come out of the words could come out of my mouth for me to tell him, she is what you were talking about, right? Just before I could say that, before the words could come out of my mouth, guess what? I felt him tell me. How do you like me now? Over the past 10 years, God has taken me out of hell, out of death, and back into life, a good, fulfilling life. CR was the key tool that he used. Now, I get high, but not on drugs. I get high on Jesus. And I get drunk, but it's not on alcohol. It's on the Holy Spirit. CR and working the steps have changed my life incredibly, and it can change yours as well. If you are new to recovery, keep coming back. Remember, it works if you work it. Get involved, get a sponsor, get into a step study, and start working your program. Thank you for letting me share this.